Hello everyone, I was Trevor, I work for Vertigo Games, I'm the tech lead there. I'm actually in the middle of E3 crunch here, so I flew over this morning from the Netherlands and I fly back again tonight to get back to work. But I made time to come and share this presentation with you. It's going to be a short one, I think we have 20-25 minutes, so I'll just share my thoughts and then answer your questions if you have them. I want to talk about accessible reality, and what I mean with that is getting people into VR. I'll start with a short introduction about us and then lead into the state of VR where we are now, and then I'll talk about what we do to get people into VR. So we are Vertigo Games. We now exist for 10 years, but we started doing VR stuff in 2012. That was around when the Oculus Kickstarter campaign was happening, and we got the first development kit. That's when we started to prototype with VR, just play around with it. There was this big, beefy headset with bad frame rate and resolution. And our CEO thought, it sort of feels like a diving mask, right? So we started working on World of Diving, a scuba diving game, because yeah, you already have your scuba diving mask. That launched through early access in 2014, and that basically got us into the VR industry. Oculus and Valve noticed us and they invited us over to their offices to show something new. That's when they showed the Vive and the touch controllers for the Rift, and they basically challenged us to make content that uses this new way of interacting with entertainment. So we made two game prototypes. One is Arizona Sunshine, the other one is Skyward, which we have both launched by now. So back in 2014, we had both of those prototypes ready, and we showed them to Oculus and Valve. And we asked, what do you like more? Do you like it at all? And Valve said, we like the zombie game, but we're Valve, so we can't really endorse zombie games, right? But then we started having friends of us come by, play it as well, and we just noticed that especially back then, people really wanted to shoot stuff in VR. It was just the easy one to pick back then. So that launched in December 16. And after that, we just went for Skyward. We did Arizona DLCs. And we started to notice that this whole story of Zuckerberg about getting 1 billion people in VR, it wasn't going to happen as fast as he wanted it to. And he came back on that later as well. Basically, we were struggling with a problem where just not enough people were getting into VR. We were not getting the numbers people were expecting in VR. There are a couple of reasons for that, and we have some solutions that we propose for those problems. And one of those solutions is the LBVR version of Arizona Sunshine, so the location-based version. But let's look at reality first. 2 sheets of data. This came out by Superdata in January this year. That's basically the sales of the headsets. So it's going up, but not as fast as the numbers predicted 4 years ago. And then also, which is a bit more realistic, is the Google Trends of virtual reality over the years. And you can see the peak, which is December 17. That's when the Rift launched. And also where we were lucky, because that's when Arizona Sunshine launched. So we were in the peak. And then you can see December of both of the years afterwards. But you can actually see it going down. Hopefully the Quest, and I think it will bring this up a bit again. But we're sort of in a state where the tech enthusiasts that want VR got VR. And now we need to target all those other people who are not in VR yet. And why are they not in VR? Well, there are multiple reasons for that. I just wrote some down. There are plenty more to name. First one is too expensive and lack of content, and those usually go hand in hand as well, right? Everyone has their price for content. If the content is awesome enough for you, you will probably pay a certain amount of that. So there's a sweet spot for everyone in there, and this is something we have to tackle as an industry. So too expensive is obviously something for the platform holders, for the headset developers, and the content for the content developers. But that goes hand in hand, as I said. Then I'll go to the last one, which is a really important one, and that's that a lot of people do not have the knowledge about VR, of the state of VR, or they're just uninformed. And that goes back to the too much hassle of the setup, or they think they do not have enough space to play VR. they do not spend enough interest in VR to learn what it actually is. And I think that is a huge group of people that we're missing in the VR space right now, but who we can target. And LBVR is the solution for that. So yeah, quickly about Arizona Sunshine. Zombie shooter, came out 2 years ago. One of the better selling VR games as to date still. We came out with DLCs, we went to PlayStation VR eventually, and that way we're going for multiple platforms and getting people into the VR space, right? The last year has been a lot about arcades and LBVR though. Like I said, a lot of people don't have room in their houses for VR, or that's what they think. And that's actually very similar to how PC gaming was 20, 30 years ago, and how it still is in Asia, for example, China and Japan. So where their arcades are still very popular and in the West they're not as popular anymore, you can actually see the same happening with VR. So arcades are getting really popular again because people cannot get it at home, either because of pricing or because of space. So there's a lot of interest in playing content in VR. Those are people that are already interested in VR. They can go to arcades. And then there's LBVR, which is for us in the same range as paintballing and laser gaming. And you can go there with your friends, or you can go there with your company and just experience VR for a first time. We actually didn't talk about it during the design session, but designing VR for arcades and especially location-based is really hard. We're talking here about spaces of like 6 by 6 or 10 by 10 meters in which you have a backpack and you're basically untethered, right? And you can walk around in that. But since you're constrained to that area, it also means we cannot make the game bigger than that area, or we have to come up with teleportation solutions for that. But you can't do teleportation because there are other players in the same space. So design-wise, that's a whole different topic. For now, I'm just going to talk about LBVR in general. So when we dove into the whole arcade industry, we noticed that there are a lot of VR devs that would also like their content in arcades, but they can't find the arcades. And we had a lot of arcades who can't find the content developers, but they could find us. So in the last year, we've also been working on helping developers getting into VR and getting more content into arcades that way. So yeah, so what we have now is, we come from both sides. We have solved a lot of problems ourselves for LBVR. So apart from the content size, you're also talking about spaces which are not connected to the internet. You have backpacks which do not have headsets or screens attached to it. So how do you edit those computers, right? How do you access those computers? There's a lot of hassle there with remote desktops and Steam VR breaking down, or those backpacks not being compatible with the new 5 Pros, and a lot of those issues that we've been struggling with over the last 1 or 2 years is something that especially the smaller devs just do not have the resources to tackle themselves. So we come from the dev side where we say, hey, we have this SDK which solves a bunch of your problems that we've seen. It's basically, you could see it as a platform SDK like Steam or Oculus, but then in an offline environment. So we also offer leaderboards and matchmaking, VoIP is in there, mixed reality, stuff like that. So some VR practices as well. And then on the other side, we come from the publishing side, where we say to arcades, hey, we have Arizona Sunshine, but we also have this range of other awesome content of smaller devs that are looking to get their game into arcades, and which could be really beneficial for you. And those sort of come together in a launcher application we call Haze, which is already out now and arcades are using it. It's basically you have one launcher machine which is connected to those backpacks, and those backpacks don't have monitors, right? And you still want to launch the game on that and diagnostic the Steam VR that crashed again and stuff like that. You use this launcher for this. So you have one PC which is connected to all those, and you can basically put users in their backpacks, play the content, and make it seamless like that. Obviously, advantage of that is that those arcade Operators are only working with one interface, and they understand the interface and can, in that way, launch all these different types of content in the same way, right? So yeah, actually we have one other big LBVR game published that way. It's Corsair's Curse. It's from our friends from Inner Space, who also made The Fisherman's Tale. More like an anecdote or a story about LBVR and managing that. So I went to GDC this year with one of our first versions of the launcher. I thought it wouldn't be that hard. We got all this new hardware, like fresh backpacks from the factory. And we thought it's probably like a day to set up, right? We went one day earlier just to be sure. And I ended up hassling with the setup for 2 days straight, including the evenings and the mornings. Like, it was literally 2 full days non-stop trying to get stuff to work. And then we're talking about backpacks who came installed with Windows instead of Windows Pro, so you could not remote desktop to it, and you had to upgrade to Windows Pro, and then it would say an error occurred, and nothing else, right, in Windows. So those are all issues those operators are struggling with as well, and it's something we're trying to solve with our launcher. You can actually bypass a lot of the Windows protocol stuff by just doing it yourself. So especially stuff like the remote desktop, we just made our own solution for that, which is instant and connects to those backpacks, and basically takes away all the hassle of having to understand hardware on such a technological level, because that's where we are still with VR, right? Everything is still, especially like Steam VR is what runs in arcades now. Stuff just breaks, the headsets are still hard to understand for non-technical people, and then the backpacks don't work as well, and the batteries are broken, all that stuff we're trying to basically solve as one package, and also be the contact point for those arcades. So one more topic I want to touch on is how do we think in the near future we'll be getting more people into VR. I think you've just been talking about the future as well, but I totally missed the talk, so I might reiterate on this as well. But standalone devices are obviously going to be one of the biggest holy grails in there. So the Quest for One, just being untethered without heavy backpacks on your back, easy to set up, just one single device, no Windows stuff and connections to manage, it just works, right? It's going to make arcades so much easier. We can have more arcades for lower pricing. It's going to be a lot cheaper, and that way we can get VR, we can make it more accessible for people to try out VR that way. And I hope that way, if we can give them the glimpse of what VR can be in those arcades, can eventually convert them into a home VR owner, right? And then the other side, which we are all working on, is better and more awesome content in the future, and higher quality productions, and actually all those full-fledged games, right? So yeah, thank you. And you guys have any questions? You can ask me anything about arcades, LBVR, Arizona, home VR.
Just with the Haze system, I'm just wondering, do you have functionality in there or proposed functionality there in the future for, instead of just a one person kind of controlling multiple devices, the participant actually having a landing page to be able to then traverse different content at different stages, so that you can kind of let them loose in a virtual kind of, store, not a store, but just like something that they can kind of opt into different experiences?
Yeah, since we have all those connections with arcades, we can also talk with them and ask them what they want, so that way we can get a lot of data. A thing they're looking for is that consumers can plan their sessions from home. They can already say, I want to play at that time, I want to play that content, and when I come into the arcade, I'll launch it right away and it works for them. So in an ideal world, that would mean that there is not even an operator launching their content for them, because it's already scheduled for them to be launched, right? That's actually something we're working on now, but that's still a bit on the future line. What's coming in soon is we now have the whole new launcher revamp, and you can use it on your iPad and connect that way, and have a faster way for operators to connect, but it's not yet for consumers to interact with.